and you may not want to call HR on your wife, but when you start addressing outside employees and you're developing their career, you want to immediately start developing certain employee retention strategies. Because if 75% of people would stay as long as somebody else heard their issues and that those issues were addressed, you're now focusing on employee retention strategies.
Hey Ramblers, before we start today's episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest episodes, interviews, and all things startup. This episode, like every episode before it and after it, is brought to you in part by OffSource, your affordable one-stop solution for outsourcing all of your office work. If you or your team are constantly waitlisting important tasks for any reason, you're doing your company a disservice. Get the support you need by outsourcing to OffSource tasks like HR support, admin, bookkeeping, social media, graphic design, web design, and so much more. You can go to the link in the description and visit offsource.tech. This is The Ramblings. Hey guys, welcome back to another wonderful episode of The Ramblings. I have today with us TJ Butler, the owner of 45 Solutions. We are going to be getting into a lot of human resources, very technical talks today, very technical conversations. Introduce yourself. How you doing today, TJ?
Thanks for having me, Angelo. I'm TJ Butler, started 45 Solutions. Happy to be here today.
That's awesome. As I mentioned, Ramblers, we are going to get in a lot of human resources, technical stuff. Explain, like, what defines human resources? I think that can be a very broad statement, especially when we're referring to human resources. Do you deal in the people side of human resources or the paper side of human resources?
So that's a great question because I'm more of the facilitator of people. I work with business owners to help them grow their people. This way, they're not looking at it like a job, but more in lines of a career. So when I work with a business owner, and I mainly focus on smaller businesses under 100 employees, doesn't matter what industry, I work so that they can help grow their employees' careers within their organization.
Okay, that's actually going to be interesting. Now, when you talk about growing somebody's organization in regards to headcount, the people in there, is it I always at least look at it from two different perspectives, right? You hire out for the talent that you're looking for immediately, or you create some form of incubator within your company that allows for the people to grow. So, which side are you in regards to having people? Do you focus on? Are you trying to, I guess, how would I frame this? Curate and grow the culture of what's around. So we're incubating people. We are trying to hire and promote within or from cross organizations. Or are you somewhat similar to a headhunter in which they just go out and they find the talent that a company needs then and there?
Well, I do both. So it's a great idea to always make sure, especially when you're talking about culture, to really build up a culture. And culture is not just going and getting the pizza and put it in the break room on a Friday afternoon. Culture is creating not only positions, but departments within your organization that don't even exist yet. That's how you get that transformation from I work at X to I've been with X for X amount of years. And this is why you need to work here too.
Okay,
So,
now I understand I understand what you're saying because we've kind of already talked, but extrapolate a little bit more for those that are a little bit unfamiliar what you mean when you're talking about that transition going from, you know, like I work here to I've been with, or explain a little bit more about what you mean.
sure. So what I mean is it really comes down to developing the overall culture within your team. Okay.
Mm.
So like I was saying, it's not just the pizzas, but and look, who doesn't love pizza, especially on a Friday? But what it really comes down to is making sure that you're taking care of your people, that not only are their jobs met, they're making the money that they want to make, but they're developing their careers. They're developing skill sets where maybe they don't have experience managing, but now they're leading teams on a project, or now they've reached a pinnacle where maybe they're a team lead for a specific department, or maybe they've been groomed for to become the next director of one of the myriad of departments that you've opened up. The key is Sometimes you have the right person, but sometimes it's the wrong seat. So you want to make sure that you got the right person in the right seat at all times.
Okay. So we've talked a bit about HR and stuff. Let's get to the nitty-gritty. Skip all the BS. What is 45 Solutions? What do you guys do? What is the core of what 45 Solutions goal is?
Sure. So the core, first of all, I'll start back and work my way toward the front.
Mhm.
So the core of 45 Solutions, we work with honesty and integrity with everything we do. So at 45 Solutions, what we do is we provide fractional HR as well as project based and recruiting services. So I myself am a fractional HR resource. And I also work with other partners to provide fractional HR resources for companies. So
What
that's
are what is HR? Like you talked about HR being like a really broad term. Is HR?
Sure. So the way it works, let's say you just started a company and the first thing you want to do is you've got this product and you want to go out and sell that product. So now you've got you went out and you hired a couple of salespeople and now you've seen sales increase. Okay. But now you need to scale. So you've got this money coming in, but you're not used to managing money. You're a product developer. So now you hire an accounting team and you've got a couple people that are managing the finances. You got a couple people over here that are managing sales, and you're starting to see sales increase. The money's being managed, but now you might have some issues with maybe some customer service. Some orders that didn't get shipped on time. Maybe a customer wasn't happy with their last shipment. So now you put a customer service team in place because you want to maintain those orders over time. But all of a sudden, you've got upset employees, and now you're dealing with employee issues. And more than 78% of small business owners spend a minimum, just a minimum of 10 hours a week dealing with people issues alone. So that's where HR comes in. You want to make sure that you can provide the core fundamentals, which is a company HR roadmap. Now, yes, it's the compliance issues. You want to make sure that you've got all the paperwork done correctly for each of your hires. You want to make sure that you're developing talent. And then you want to make sure that you have a good talent acquisition strategy so that you can continue to grow your organization as your business continues to scale.
Okay. I want to focus on the audience for a second, right? There's a specific number, at least from my perspective or what I'm thinking of, a a number that that problem becomes truly apparent. It would be pretty hard, at least from my particular opinion, perspective, and experience, for there to be that many issues on a 3, 4 person team when it's the employee and owners. Now, obviously, having gone through my own co-founder disagreements and having, an ex co-founder now at this point, I completely understand how the people issues of things works on a day-to-day basis where two people of equal power can kind of clash and there be issues and things with from there. But at what point does it become an employee versus the employer perspective in regards to in getting HR involved, right? So where do you usually see where someone might need that HR for handling the people perspective? Mainly because, and the reason I'm just asking people is because dealing with people is something that's very hard to outsource in regards to with the new technology, AI, different companies that are popping up that handle that back end HR for onboarding and just all of the paperwork that comes with HR. But dealing with the actual people themselves takes one people to actually deal with and have the problems, but also it takes a certain amount of people that problems become that regular. Where do you see companies hitting that spot of now you might want to start dealing with the culture and the feelings and the emotions of every person on the team?
I've seen it start as low as just less than a handful of employees. Okay. And even further than that, research shows 75% of employees would stay longer with an organization when they know their concerns are not only heard, but addressed and not by the business owner. So even if you're a small business, you can benefit tremendously from having an unbiased HR address those employee needs. So, yeah, it could be less than a handful of people. Now, if it's family members, you might wind up taking that issue to the family dinner table, and you may not want to call HR on your wife. But when you start addressing outside employees and you're developing their career, you want to immediately start developing certain employee retention strategies. Because if 75% of people would stay as long as somebody else heard their issues and that those issues were addressed, you're now focusing on employee retention strategies. So you want to keep those people. So what are you going to do to keep them? And how are you going to further their career? So that's when you want to make sure that you have different custom HR policies and procedures in place. And as you're garnering new employees to continue to scale, you want to make sure that you have a great onboarding process because it's the first impression.
Right.
If somebody walks in, you just hired somebody to join your organization and they walk in and you just slide some papers across the table and say, "Here, fill this out." And there's your seat. It doesn't set a good message.
Right.
And it'll immediately kill any of the culture that you worked so hard to grow and build.
Now, you mentioned that it would be good to get HR involved for certain situations because it's good to have an unbiased opinion.
Mhm.
Now, is that only as an HR, like a fractional HR? Because from the experience that I've seen on social media, what people say is that HR is for the benefit and the purpose of the employer, not the employee. And so, what a lot of employees think, or what I've experienced and seen and hear, what a lot of employees think is that HR is for the benefit of them. And so, HR is not your friend. You don't talk to them. You don't give them more information than you should. They're for the benefit of the employer, not the employee.
Well, and it can be that case, but a good business owner is going to utilize and leverage his HR to grow his team. So he's going to have his HR team, what whether it's a fractional HR resource, whether it's a couple of full-time employees, any good HR department is going to be focused on the growth of the team as opposed to what's best just for the business. That's the quickest way to develop an us versus them mentality. Whereas if you want to foster a great culture within your organization, a good HR team is going to focus not only on what's best for the business, but what's equally as best for the employee.
How does it how what because we wanna make sure that we keep things I like keeping things technical. How would a business owner hire for HR that is unbiased against him? Because instinctively, HR is incentivized with money to be on the side of the business. Our job is to protect the business, almost kind of like a miniature legal department. When we watch TV shows and everything, we always think of the lawyers as being the bad guys. In the real world, we do see lawyers as the bad guys, but we also see HR people as the bad guys. You are someone that comes in and is not even part of the actual organization that you work with as a fractional employee, as a fractional HR executive. I'm sure
So,
there's got to be a lot of feelings when someone brings you in. Someone's like, "Oh, someone's got to be getting canned."
well, that's a great point. And to further that, one of the best things that you can establish right off the bat is with trust. So, for example, I was working with a client recently that was experiencing a lot of turnover. And he was talking about, I've had this position, the person lasted 3 months. And then in this position, this person lasted 4 months. And this position lasted 6 months. I immediately stopped the individual who's the business owner. And I said, "Can I ask you a question? Is the problem you? You just talked about three different individuals who lasted less than 6 months. And could the issue at hand, since they all reported directly to you, could the issue be that maybe you were the issue, or maybe you weren't delegating management duties effectively enough so that this way what you want to communicate, because you as a business owner are focused on sales, you're focused on inventory, you're focused on finance, you're focused on marketing, and now you're focused on HR. Maybe what you need to do is diversify the responsibility across the team so that this way you're able to let people's careers grow even more. Because when you, as the business owner, say one thing, somebody that already reports to three other managers hears something completely different. So it comes down to effective communication, number one. And number two, it's the diversification of responsibility.
Okay. How can someone be better effective at communicating what they need? Is it a practice? We don't want to just burn people's money. What way can we be more effective with communicating?
Sure. So that's where I'll work with business owners on talent management. There are three key areas to talent management, which are crucial to every HR department. The first starts with personnel development. That's not only your org chart, you've got your so and so reports to so and so and reports to so and so, but how are you developing that personnel? What's the succession planning look like? Next come the employee performance reviews. How often are your employees being reviewed, not only by their peers, but also by their leads? And how effective is the communication? How effective are they able to give back communication to their lead? So that this way, if the goals may be totally unattainable, the the KPIs can be readjusted so that people can actually develop a career instead of hitting, a plateau, so to speak. And then lastly is compensation management. Everybody wants to make more money. At the end of the day, you're at that job because you want to make money. You want to be able to pay your bills. You want to provide for your family, and you want to be able to go on vacations at times. So you want to make sure that you're being paid fairly. And that's those three key areas, or compensation management in conjunction with the review, in conjunction with succession planning, will help to develop the entire talent management across an organization.
I feel like we've been really technical, and that's great advice. However, uh, I would like to bring out a couple of different differentiators, especially in regards to the current economic climate or state of hiring with the labor market and the new entering workforce. I think they're now called like Gen Z, Gen A, or whatever the
I
youngest.
think it's now that we've circled the alphabet. It's now to Gen Alpha.
Okay, so Gen Alpha, uh, I'm assuming that's gonna be the 16, 17, and 8-year-olds entering the workforce, either at your local restaurant, McDonald's, but also the ones that are 22, 23, 24, moving into your very first positions of corporate post graduation. We have seen a completely different attitude in regards to how Gen Alpha approaches work versus, boomers, millennials, Gen Z. How, as a larger corporation, because now we're going to start getting into the mix of things. Sorry, small business owners, this is not going to be this is not going to be your area, right? I just want to get into the hypothetical of things. Sure. I'm 26, I turned 27. You are probably in your middle 30s, something like that, right? And then we
A little
have
bit higher, but thanks.
right, and then we have people in their late teens, early 20s. Um, so all of those people are going to have different needs, different, you know, thoughts about what the market looks like, what they deserve in regards to compensation, and what's important to them. As an organization that is trying to meet the needs of all of these employees, you're at the cusp of now trying to spend money that you may or may not have, or may not be able to fully justify to, let's just face it, an older generation of people that have been in the owner seat for a long period of time. How do you, within budget, I would assume, and obviously, create a culture that is able to, I don't want to necessarily say please, but at least satisfy the basic needs of each of the different individuals that an organization carries?
Well, one of the most interesting things that I've seen recently is first and foremost, people are retiring later because people live longer.
Mhm.
And we're almost past that point of the baby boomers. I can't get hired anywhere and I just got laid off. I mean, if you look at the beginning of 2024, there was a number of companies that were laying individuals off.
Mhm.
So the market became flooded with candidates. But what's starting to take place as we begin Q2 is that organizations are taking a strong look at individuals that can bring experience, and the fractional market itself has actually lended its hand to say, you're looking for an executive, but you can't afford that executive and you can't carry the benefits that that typical executive would need. So that's where the fractional market has really been able to play because it's been able to provide organizations with the senior level leadership that they need within their organization to guide some of the younger workforce that is coming out in today's society and provide that type of leadership. So you're seeing a healthy mix of people retiring later, fractional leadership, as well as growing organizations providing additional resources to companies that are looking to grow. And they're also able to provide that type of leadership not only to the organization itself, but also to the individuals that are looking to start their careers or further their careers.
Okay, I'm gonna put you in the hot seat for a bit.
Fine.
We've had a lot of layoffs since the beginning of 2024, and some say that it's because of the overhiring that happened, between like 2018, 2022. A lot of money was being thrown around during those particular times. What is the difference? Or not even what is twofolded question, I guess. What is the difference between the people that were laid off and weren't laid off? And what, not for all, could some of the people that were laid off have done to avoid being laid off? Or is it just overall fully impossible to avoid it?
Well, you're talking about a situation that, it really is situationally independent. Let's take the example of there was one company, I believe, laid off 5,000 workers and then the next week posted 500 jobs. Now, the 5,000 that were laid off were all remote. And then the 500 that they then posted jobs for were all back to the office.
Okay.
So there's a myriad of issues. First off, you've got the return to work situation. I think if COVID taught us anything, the post-COVID world, people can really work anywhere. Okay.
As an
It's
HR person, do you truly believe that? Is that
dependent.
something that's like in your blood, or do you feel still that there's some level of boost to being in person?
I have two schools of thought on it. First, if you're producing, if you're making a widget, you obviously can't do it from somebody's home
Mhm.
because you've got inventory control issues and everything else. So obviously, if we're talking about service-based businesses, home services, those are positions that need to be done out in the field. But there are some positions where, those roles can be performed remotely. And what we've seen now is some people actually benefit more from working at home. Some people can actually be more productive, you know, even if they're throwing a load of washing in between Zoom calls, they're actually more productive. They're working harder and they're able to provide their organization with a lot more than when they had to sit in traffic for an hour or so, or even if it was a half hour and, both to and from work, because now they're able to maybe be home for the kids, or now they're able to have more of that work life balance that everybody said. Now, I do believe that it does make for a great culture when you're able to bring people together on a consistent basis. So I am a proponent of, for the right situation and the right company, having an in office or at work environment. But I do think that the days of having, you know, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, those businesses are, almost long gone.
Oh, yes. I don't think businesses could even operate if their hours were strictly 9 to 5. I think the only business that, to my knowledge, that I know that is truly strictly almost like a 9 to 5, and even then, there's a lot of iterations of companies trying to change that, is banks. Because like, if we are working 9 to 5, at what point should we ever be able to do anything if companies were truly open from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday? We would all be working during those particular times. Now, because of the pandemic, and there has been a shift in culture of workload and everything of that nature, there's also been a shift in how people view companies that are asking people to come back to the office. What are your thoughts, especially as a fractional HR person? What are your thoughts on people avoiding coming back into the office? Like, from your headhunter perspective, you're probably seeing a lot of people that are going to say, I won't take the job if it's not remote. What are your thoughts on people that are gunning that hard for remote work?
For those individuals that want to stay completely remote, I say stay completely remote, but you have to temper your expectations. You're not going to have that, dream scenario where you can do whatever you can do the role that you were originally hired to do that required you to be in an office. And if the business says you got to come back, then you got to come back. However, I will say that now there's a lot more flexibility. So take the case in point, parents, the ability for a parent to be able to put the kid on the bus and, make sure that they're at the, the dance recital or the middle school sports game. And then for that parent to be able to log online later on that evening after dinner's cleared up and instead of popping on, Netflix or whatever you're streaming at that point with your spouse or whatever, you're answering a couple of the other emails. If you're able to be that much more productive and have that type of flexibility, that's good ownership. Okay. And that's where you're developing an even stronger culture within your organization. So, I almost want to say if you're gung ho about being, I refuse to return to an office, great. Well, then you better make sure that your job never mandates that you're in an office. And you better make sure that you're available 24/7 because that's what you're signing up for by not being in an office. If you have an organization that has a flexible schedule, maybe being in the office a few days a week, but they're going to give you flexibility as to what time you come in, what time you leave, you know, that's the best scenario. But I also discourage people from what were they called? Badge, badge buddies, where somebody would take somebody's badge in and swipe it just to make sure that it looked like that person was in the office, even though they were still at home and attending Zoom meetings with a virtual background. Not that there's anything wrong with
Did
virtual
not
background.
know that. I did not know that that was a thing, badge buddies. Okay, so
Oh
I
yeah,
guess our Netflix sharing, like, okay,
yeah.
so I guess that brings me to this question, which is another hot seat question of, should remote workers be paid on a different scale than people that are coming into office?
No, I think that workers should be paid what they're due. It doesn't matter whether you can do a position at home or whether you can do a position at an office. You should be paid for the role itself. Now
Now,
that
how do you deter now, as an HR person, your job is to, I'm sure, negotiate after finding a potential candidate in terms of salary that could meet the ability for the company to pay. But with the expansion, especially because I'm the founder of OffSource and we deal with, essentially fractional employee support for all areas, including HR, we deal with global talent, which now asks me and lends me, what are your thoughts on because of the pandemic, the globalization of talent and how that can affect small businesses in regards to paying employees their due? Because a lot of small business owners see globalization talent as, I can pay this person 45%, 50%, even if it was 70% of what I would pay somebody else, I have received a 30% cost reduction on my labor for this same job. How would you go about 10 years from now? Or obviously, this is, hypotheticalized. I don't know if that's a word.
we'll make it
um, Yeah, we're making it up. How would you determine the pay, especially for someone that's doing a job in San Francisco versus North Carolina versus New York versus Mexico?
I'll give you two examples, and these two examples are the key to your answer. One, you've got two different steakhouses in your town.
Mhm.
One offers prime rib at, let's say, $30 a plate. Okay. The other offers prime rib at $50 a plate. Now, the taste is subjective. Okay. So you tell me which one you like better, but why the two different prices? Okay.
Okay.
So, secondly, the second answer is if you've got two apartments that you're looking at, okay? One has two bedrooms and it's on the far side of town, which is greatly connected to, all the major, you know, restaurants and theaters. And it's got, great parking. But then the other one is on the other side of town, which is cheaper, but it may have, you know, free parking. And you also get, access to all the major metro transports. You're right by the airport. You're right by the train station. Why are the two prices different? It's because of location. So people will pay what they get for it. They determine that based upon somebody's experience, one candidate may be able to bring a better experience than another candidate. That takes it back to that steak example I was telling you about. They could be the same cut of meat, but then location. One individual, you're paying for the services that you get based upon where that individual lives. That individual has bills that they need to pay. And where one person lives is going to be, their bills are going to be vastly different than another individual's. Say, for example, you and I, let's say we worked for, let's just say, Apple. Okay. And we're both working for Apple and we're both HR executives. Well, I may make a different salary working for Apple based upon where I reside, and you may make a different salary based upon where you reside. Now, we might be able to provide the same uh, services and the same job responsibilities. However, let's say you now move where I live, or maybe I move where you live. Now we're getting paid, but we're still getting paid the same. I could possibly bring more experience than you might be able to bring.
Okay. Now, typically, we're going to compare two people providing the same level of value. The only difference is their location. Is it wrong, or should a company automatically just choose saying, "Hey, we have two people, they're the same level candidate. Let's go with the one that's going to cost us less." Or do you see, now this is, I guess, more of the hypothetical part of the question. Do you see there being more of a globalization in terms of the cost of what something is, right? So getting rid of the idea that a developer in San Francisco makes probably 100x what a developer in a place like Nigeria might make, or a place in Africa or Mexico, a more, developing or third world country. Um, how would you explain that in regards to the person that's getting paid less, that obviously would like to get paid more, that they're not being paid based on their location, but providing the same skill? And how do you explain to the person that lives in San Francisco that might move to North Carolina because they're being paid so highly to reduce their expenses if they're remote? How can they, be also fairly treated by not feeling like, well, because I'm moving, you're going to reduce my pay, or because I'm here, I received the less pay?
That's a great question. So, one of the first things is if you're going to set up remote positions that are based upon complete 100% remote, you want to almost have a scale in place so that this way you can adjust based upon the resources, um, locality.
Okay.
So, an individual that may, like you said, let's say lives in the Bay Area, he's a developer, he might be at the top end of the scale, or as opposed to a developer that may, I think you said North Carolina, and even threw in there, international, might be in another country altogether. That individual may have a lower cost of living. So that's where you want to have a sliding scale, even if they have, you know, 2 years each, let's say, of developing, Java. They're a Java developer, and they both have 2 years of experience. That's why that's why organizations will typically have, and everybody gets upset on the social medias and the LinkedIn, and they'll be like, put the salary out there. The reason that most HR companies and most HR resources don't put salary out there is because of the pure and simple fact that no two individuals are the same. If you're going to reduce a position down to the point that anybody can do it at any position, then you're making it just an hourly position. That's completely different than taking truly salary. That's the difference between hourly and salaried positions.
Okay. Now, here's where, again, I'm going to keep you in the hot seat. I feel like you might be sweating a little bit. I'm going to keep you sweating because we're talking about social media where a lot of people are saying, yes, post the salaries of the job. And if you're going to pay less for someone else, there has to be some kind of logical explanation for that, like location or something. However, because of the idea of this remote work and because of now globalization, if I make $400,000 as, as developer in San Francisco, and I now were to transfer to North Carolina, does that mean that people from higher cost of living areas are worth more?
No, no, it actually doesn't. And that's where a good organization, and if you have a great talent acquisition strategy, you're going to plan for that in advance. You're going to develop that, not only are you going to focus your talent acquisition strategy on making sure that as you're attracting new talent, you do have a scale for salaries, but you're also going to focus that personnel development so that if you're paying more, you want to be able to get more return from the individual performing their role.
Right. Okay. So how would you then consult a company that is looking at trying to globalize their talent, right? Let's say they don't have any global talent and their goal is to expand. However, because they are, a SaaS company, they run a tech company, they would like to be able to keep costs as minimal as possible. Do you feel that it's fair to the people already in the company that work in the states that make a certain amount of money that, you know, they might be at risk of having a reduction in salary because the company is deciding to hire and work with a wider range of people?
No, I don't think that that's fair. Number one. Number two, what it also does is it creates a distrust within the leadership in the organization, because how have they communicated to their team, we want to promote you, we want to grow your career, and we want to now all of a sudden we're going to shift all of our development operations overseas to get the cheapest cost possible and try and get the most production. So I don't see where the comparison is in terms of talent versus cost. I believe truly in you get what you pay for.
Okay.
So if you and I were going car shopping, for example, I believe, what did I hear recently? There is a new Porsche that can do 0 to 60 in 2.1 seconds.
Okay.
What the cost is for that? $230,000.
Okay.
All right. So take that and compare it against, let's say the standard American Corvette. Every middle-aged guy's, I'm going through my midlife crisis and I got to
This
get the
I
I get a
thought that
Corvette.
was a myth, and then, you go to the backwoods of New York, you go to the backwoods of Connecticut, they all have a Corvette.
Everybody's got Corvettes, and usually they're guys between the ages of, let's just say, 40,
45 and 60.
45 and 60. I like that. So now all of a sudden you got all these Corvettes running around, and because they think they can go as fast as possible, they want to push the limits, they want to get that excitement. But you know, they're getting what they paid for. They paid, let's say, what is it? A Corvette's probably like 75, 100K tops.
Mhm.
And you got to double that if you want to cut that 0 to 60 time in half. Mm. So you get what you pay for, ultimately, is what I'm trying to get to by all these analogies that I'm giving you, because I want to make sure that it's appropriate for everybody.
Right.
And that's how I consult any business. If you want to offshore things, you're going to get what you pay for. You might run into quality issues. Okay. You might run into issues in regards to the coding. You might run into timeline issues. You may not be able, your go-to-market strategy may not be as strong by cutting costs and cutting corners. And it may not be as, your production issues, might be more if you can't, you know, provide a warehouse where you're able to control inventory management and, minimize on efficiencies.
Okay. So I guess putting our futuristic glasses on, do you think that there's going to be a merger of economic markets? So, for example, New York, San Francisco, very similar markets. However, New York, San Francisco versus Charlotte versus somewhere in Texas,
Atlanta versus
Atlanta, very, very different. Now,
Fort
obviously,
Worth.
you get what you pay for, but also you get what you pay for based on the location that you are. So, a $75,000 developer or just worker in general, anywhere in the Midwest, if you pay that person $80,000, they are going to give you their soul. However, if you give somebody in New York City or San Francisco $70,000, they might give you your ass to kiss.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you're paying for what you get, but it's based on location. So do you think that there's going to be a change in pay scale or a change in I'm gonna edit that actually. Is there going to be a change in economic pay scale based on location? Or do you think it's going to just now be this is what the price is everywhere, no matter where you are?
I think that there's a case to be made that it could eventually come to that. An individual, the product that you get is going to cost more. I mean, look at surge pricing, for example, I think Wendy's tried it and backed out within 24 hours, but there are other organizations that are trying it and they're effective with it. I
Mhm.
mean, look at when we go to buy airline tickets. That's a perfect scenario. Um, if you buy an airline ticket to any major uh, SEC area in the first or second week of May, you're going to pay significantly higher prices. Why? It's graduation week,
Right.
and people want to go for the whole week. So because it's warm, it's nice. They make a mini vacation out of it. So surge pricing can be effective, but it's got to be managed correctly. A good organization is going to plan ahead and make sure that not only can they sustain that, but that they can succeed from that and that they can develop their people from that and develop careers from that.
Mm. Okay. So knowledge test question or opinion knowledge based question. Who do you think is the most over or what do you think is the most overpaid role in a company?
HR. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. You got to have fun with it, right?
Right.
No, I would say the most overpaid position within an organization. Um, that's a good put me on the spot. Because I'm bound to piss somebody off, especially maybe somebody that I've worked with previously. But uh, I would say salespeople's salaries.
Oh, I've heard that from other people that, salespeople have a very inflated salary in comparison to the amount of work they do.
But what I will say is that I feel that salespeople should get lower salaries and higher commissions because they
Okay.
will work their butt off for those commissions. But you go to some organizations and you get salespeople salaries that are way too overinflated. And then not only that, they have the ability to compound commissions and bonuses on top of it. It almost makes it unfair for the individuals that are actually doing the work that the salesperson sold.
Right. Oh my gosh. I'm setting some ruffled feathers. All right. So we
You
got
asked, so I figured why not?
listen, I personally agree that sales should be a higher commission, lower base, mainly because your job is to sell. That is like other jobs, it's a lot trickier to determine not only the validity of you yourself in that role, but of that role itself. I feel that sales, very, very front and center focus, clearly can show how good a person is. Now, HR is to determine how ethically good that person is, because within sales, when you have a high commission and low base, depending on who you are, it obviously can draw or attract people that do unethical things within sales practices. Having started my career out, I think I started my career out in sales. I've seen some very unethical sales tactics,
Mhm.
and people just don't necessarily want to be a part of that. So I think it's definitely going to ruffle some feathers that salespeople are probably the most overpaid. Now, I want to focus on
Well,
45
overpaid salary wise. I'll
overpaid salary rise, not counting a commission. If you earn your, I believe that if you earn your check off of commissions, like real estate people, real estate sales, you earn it. You have to wait 3 months to make a sale. You make the sale, you make good money, but there's not a salary in that, to my knowledge. No.
right.
Um, so I want to talk about 45 solutions.
Sure.
How did you even start 45 solutions? Like HR usually isn't the high school dream. So was owning a business the dream always, or was it just the way the tide took you?
It really was just the way the tide took me, to kind of use your analogy. What I wanted was basically what happened. I was at an organization, and I have more than 20 plus years of HR and talent acquisition experience. And I'd gotten to the point where I felt like I kind of hit not just the ceiling, but I really have a passion to work with people, number one. And I also am very invested in the servant leadership methodology and the servant leadership mentality to really give back. So I wanted to create an organization where I could do that. I'm based just out of the Philadelphia area. So I wanted also the ability to work not just locally and regionally, but nationally as well. So I created 45 Solutions to provide fractional HR services, across the country. I would work with those business owners where I can really make an impact developing the HR fundamentals, the people experience, and then the talent management, and then combine that with the recruitment services that I can offer as well, and really have some what I like to call is like service driven execution. I put the highest value just on relationships. Um, and what that really means for me is that I'm able to deliver um, a meaningful experience when I'm able to provide my client, and get off the phone with the client and they're like, wow, you know what? That was perfect. You made my day. Because sorry, I was figuring I'd pause for editing.
Oh no, that's fine.
So, for example, I have a client recently who called me. He recently had somebody give their 2-week notice as soon as he got back from a business trip, first thing Monday morning. And this resource was a leader within his organization. And then he, may have some individuals they might want to look to place, but he also has other needs, other positions that he wants to add. And he wants to make sure that he's taking care of his whole team. What I'm able to do is I'm able to work with that individual, build out a real personnel development um, matrix, if you will, so that this way, not only are we focusing on replacing the individual that decided it was time for them to move on because, you know, they're basically leaving because they have another opportunity elsewhere and they're going to be moving down south. So, family situations, what have you. And, so now you have an opportunity for promotion. And now you have an opportunity to, maybe even create positions that didn't even exist within the organization. And when I end that call with the client, he's like, wow, I was a little stressed when we first got on because I thought we had all these issues and it was going to take a lot longer. I expected this call to not be, finished in the 50 minutes that we were able to diagnose it. That's what gets me up in the morning. When I'm able to talk to a candidate that I've been talking to about an open position that I'm working on for one of my clients and say, "Hey, guess what? You nailed the final interview with the client. They want to make you an offer. They want to know if you can start on, next Monday. This is the salary you're going to get, which, by the way, was a couple bucks more than what you were, previously making. And the only bad news is now you got to give your former employer 2 weeks notice." And you hear the excitement through, just reverberate through the phone, or whether if I'm doing a video call, when you can see the excitement on somebody's face, that's what gets me up every single day. That's what gets me excited, when I can make an impact on somebody's life and really make a difference with people.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing. And so I guess give everyone why you named it 45 solutions.
So, um, Great question. First off, I decided to go out on my own on my 45th birthday last year, and then secondly, I played football in high school. 45 was my jersey number, and when my wife and I decided to have kids, we moved back to the same area where I actually went to high school, and I was a coach for my son when he was. Has it been doing it the whole time?
No.
Okay, I'm going to restart that. So 45 Solutions, great question. I decided to name the business. I decided to go out on my own uh, on my 45th birthday last year. That was the first inclination that maybe I want to tie what was my favorite number because it was my jersey number in high school.
Mhm.
And when my wife and I got married and had kids, we decided to move back to the local area. And now my kids are going to graduate from the same high school I went to. And I didn't ask him, but my son, who I had coached when he was younger playing football, he picked the exact same jersey number. So it's got that number. My brother also had the same number as well. And he graduated from the same school as I did. So the number had a lot of personal meaning for me. One of the first things I did when I set up the business and I set up the business financials was I changed my personal debit card PIN from 4545 so that this way, just in case I ever dropped it, nobody would ever know what the original PIN was.
All right. Listen, man, I really love this interview. I think we're gonna have to have you back on to get into some more, world events, tech and like pop stuff, like pop culture and everything. Definitely maybe have like a I've been thinking about maybe doing some reoccurring guests, but this is the part of the show where we love the shameless plug. Anyone that's heard you speak today obviously knows that you know your stuff and that you mean well and are trying to provide the best possible service, whether it's to the actual employee looking for a job or the employer. I might actually have to have you come back to speak specifically about getting a job. That's not something I've had people talk about really. Um, so give us the shameless plug about 45 Solutions, where we can find you, exactly again what it is that you do, list of services, pricing. Give us your ad.
Sure. So 45 Solutions provides fractional HR services for clients. We start at low as 5 hours per month, and we're willing to go up to 40 hours per month, providing HR fundamentals, the people experience, and talent management. Now, we also offer recruitment services, whether it's contingent recruiting, retained recruiting, or even executive recruiting. You can find us on the internet. I was going to say the web, but that just sounds so old. I feel like I dated myself. But you can find us on the internet at 45solutions.net. Also on LinkedIn, you can follow me. It's TJ Butler. Now you're going to find a lot of TJ Butlers. The trick is when you look up my name on LinkedIn, it's T period J period Butler because I still use the
Or
W.
you can go into the link in the description to find all of his links, social medias, and everything. You do not have to bother typing all of that stuff in. You guys know I like to have everything succinctly in the description, in the chat box. Um, and depending on where you're looking, right there. Alrighty. So anything else you want to give? Do you have any events or anything coming up? What can we take away from today?
I got a couple of events coming up in the near future. They will be on my website once they're confirmed.
Alrighty. So you guys have it. We have had TJ Butler, the human resources expert, owner of 45 Solutions. Until we meet again, Ramblers, it was great talking with you.
Thank you, Angela.